Hello and welcome to the Utility Week podcast with me, Rob Horgan, and as ever, I'm joined by James Wallin. For this episode, we're going to dig over the biggest stories of the past 2 weeks. We're going to start by looking at Engie's takeover of UKPN, and then we're going to spend the second half of the podcast looking or reflecting on the Channel 4 docudrama Dirty Business, which has been keeping comms people very busy in the water sector this week. But as said, let's start with the good news. I assume we're calling it good news.
I think so. Yeah.
Engie takeover of UKPN in a deal worth £10.5 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts, James?
Yes. Well, my first thought is I'm going to have to get used to saying the name of this company, because it was always historically Engie, which, EN in French you pronounce on, don't you? But now, over the past year or so, that seems to have crept into their Engie now. And I noticed that the CEO was always saying Engie as well. So I'm going to have to get used to that, because I think I've said
the CEO who has the most Scottish name ever, but the biggest French accent. So it took me by surprise on the call yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think she made a point of that. I've seen the video that was recorded for staff that was announcing this deal, and she makes a reference to a very very French first name and Scottish last name. Yes, it was. So is it good? Is it good news? Yeah, I mean it's got to be a good advert for UK utilities. Engie were, when the video following the announcement, we're talking about the attraction of the UK for investment. It's obviously already a territory that they are present in. They have the business retail arm. They also have the generation business, but with the acquisition of UKPN, this makes the UK their second biggest territory after their home country of France. It is a good sign of the health of utilities, and the fact that Catherine called out the regulator as being one of the attractions of coming to the UK it's certainly something that Ofgem would want to hear from investors. I'm not necessarily sure that it's something that they would want to be heard from investors. They always walk that fine balance, as we've talked before, about creating a framework that is attractive for investment but isn't seen as too generous. And when we discuss this deal, I think that's probably going to be the talking point, is what does the price that was paid for UKPN mean for electricity distribution networks more widely? They're just about to go into battle with Ofgem really over rates of return, which is always the big sticking point when we come to the price control period. I don't think there's any doubt that they are going to get a big increase in their budgets. They're going to need to spend a lot of money over the next 5-year period. But the argument, as always, is going to be, where does the balance lie on rates of return? And if you're getting, attractive of deals for distribution networks, then that shows that the sector is investable, and therefore is there really so much of a need for generous returns for investors? Because of course this is the second takeover of a DNO in this current price control. So we had Electricity Northwest becoming SP Electricity Northwest.
I hope they don't do a similar rebrand of UKPN to an Engie UKPN.
Don't think that's on the cards, but
no. But and obviously the National Grid takeover of WPD not too long before.
Yes,
as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. That wasn't that long ago as well. Yeah, certainly in
2021, I think, when I looked it up yesterday. Speaking to investors. Off the record yesterday, they were saying that the general consensus was that the amount paid for UKPN was in line with those two deals. Some were suggesting it was a little bit more, some were suggesting it was a little bit less. There's sort of, I think, the way you spin the numbers it comes out either side,
Yeah.
whichever way you want. But I think that point that the market is clearly really investable is a big one, and will play out in ED3 sort of negotiations. But it also begs the question of whether we'll see more deals in this space. One investor quite boldly told me yesterday that he predicts another deal to be struck before the year's up. So
which would be interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting one to keep an eye on, I think.
I mean, there's certainly, I'm not sure if this person was talking about in the DNO space, but if they were, then there's not that many contenders. I mean, I would say that National Grid certainly don't. I would be very surprised if they were looking to offload the distribution arm. Similarly for Scottish Power, SSE, have had a process over the years of rolling disposals of parts of their portfolio. So it could be that they would pivot more towards generation and transmission. That's a possibility. Northern Power Grid, I suppose, is the one that has been in its current hands of Berkshire Hathaway for the longest. So potentially that one could be in the mix. But if they were talking more widely, be interesting to see if there's any activity in the gas market, where again there has been M&A activity over recent years. So it would be interesting, but with the amount of uncertainty hanging over the gas networks. That would be a surprise, but yes, certainly one to watch. But I have to say, I would love to say that I saw this takeover of UK Power Networks coming by. I absolutely didn't. It was a really well kept secret. We've not heard any snifters of this, and there was no speculation even of this that I saw in press leading up to it, which, given that we understand that the offer came last July, and I should stress that it was an unsolicited bid. This wasn't CKI, the current owners, looking to sell UKPN. This was an unsolicited bid that came in from Engie. And given that it has been the negotiation been going for that long, it's impressive that nothing leaked, and it does explain why Basil Scarcella, the CEO of UKPN, has not been returning my calls for the past 8 months. But we'll forgive him for that.
He did on the day, though, didn't he? Once the announcement was out. He
did on the day, yeah. And it's good to see that Basil is staying in post. He's he's someone who's got a real zeal for the job. He's a real character, and you've got to give him respect for what he's achieved in the time he's been at UKPN. It was, it's a fairly a really badly performing networks, three networks licenses when he and CKI took it over. Back in 2010, and he's transformed it to be, very very often topping the lists of various metrics on DNOs. Not always, I should stress, but yeah, it's a very highly performing company, and particularly on customer service. I mean, it's one of the few utilities that come out strongly in the UK customer service index, which I think the latest one came out last month, and UKPN always does very well on that. Obviously, they were our utility of the year at the Utility Week Awards in December. Not for a moment saying that had any bearing on this deal. That's certainly not what I'm saying. Don't put words in my mouth, Rob. But I would just point out that not only was the utility of the year for 2025 pretty soon bought up, but the previous winner was Electricity Northwest, which, as we've already mentioned, was picked up. And again, I am not saying that there's any correlation here. I am just saying that we are putting up our entry fees for this year.
Yeah, who wants to be sold? coming back to that point on how well UKPN's been performing, I've got some numbers about their first 2 years of incentive payments. They received net incentive payments of 43.7 million for the first 2 years of the current regulatory period. Across the whole sector, there was only £86 million paid out. So more than half has gone to UKPN. So that does really hammer home that point you were making about how well they are performing under Basil, which, you know, is encouraging that he's staying on, whether that's permanently for an interim period. It sort of hasn't been said for now, but it does sound like for quite a while anyway. For the foreseeable future, he seems to be there, doesn't he? So
that will inevitably be a talking point, and Basil would know that was the case. I mean, I remember interviewing him. It must be about 3 years ago now, and asking him about this point about when, you know, he was likely to step aside. You know, he's 70 now, but he's, as I say, he's still got a real zeal for the job, and I don't see him, you know, wanting to step aside anytime soon. But yeah, I mean, I suppose he's going to want to get the ED3 business plan done, and then see where we go from there. But there's a lot of good internal candidates in there to take over. It's a really strong management team that they've got there. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. But it does seem like it's going to be very much business as usual at UKPN. One of the differences with this deal and some of the other ones that we've already mentioned is obviously this is a company coming in that does not have any kind of distribution network infrastructure in the UK. Catherine McGregor talked about the fact that this was not a deal that was done for synergies or with synergies in mind. Now, of course, people always say that when there is a takeover, but in this case, you'd have to think that is the case. There might be, I suppose, some kind of back office functions that they could share with the UK operations, but probably not that much compared to something like the Scottish Power acquisition of Electricity Northwest, where, you know, that license sat in between the two existing SPEN networks. There's obviously a lot there that you can do with the synergies. Same with the National Grid acquisition, but in this case, probably not the case. Which again might feed into the price element of it.
Yeah, she did on the media call that I joined. She was stressing the point that they do run distribution networks in other parts of the world.
This is yes.
So so they were hoping to bring some insight from I think it's in France they have one, don't they? And perhaps Brazil, I think, was the other country she mentioned.
Yes, I think that's right.
They do some work in Brazil, whether it's the DNO or not. That's slightly outside of what we would look into. But
there's definitely interesting. Yeah. And I guess the other big question, I don't really know that there's much in this, but it's worth discussing, is what this means for CKI's strategy for the UK going forward. This was it's obviously a Hong Kong based company, but when they took over UKPN, the attitude towards certainly Hong Kong based businesses and Chinese businesses and their investment in the UK, it was very different. So that has now become a bit of a political hot potato. So I don't know if CKI looking at this would be keen to go to perhaps less difficult territories for them, where they're getting less pressure, less scrutiny, but they still have a lot of investment in the UK and in UK utilities. So it'd be interesting to see if this affects their strategy. As I say, I don't know that is the case. I think it's always been the position that they are an investor, and they would always consider offers for any of their assets if they were at the right price. There was an attempt to take over UKPN in 2022, which got very close, we understand, but then floundered at the last minute. This again, unsolicited bid, but clearly it was attractive enough for CKI to consider it. So it might be just as simple as that. There might not be any wider connotations there, but it's certainly something that you'll see more speculation of that, I'm sure.
Obviously, it wasn't that long ago they were lined up to take over Thames as well, wasn't it? And
yes, absolutely.
So they were obviously still keen. What was that? 6 months ago, maybe slightly longer. They looked in the driving seat to take over Thames, didn't they? At that point, so it would be a pretty quick turnaround in opinion, I would say. So yeah, I'm not sure if they're out of the UK market just yet. Speaking of Thames, brings us quite nicely onto the second
look at
big subject.
That was like Radio 4 kind of link. That was excellent. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, it wasn't rehearsed either. But yeah, onto the story that we haven't covered really ourselves, because I'm not sure how we would, beyond all the outcry in the national newspapers about the Channel 4 docudrama Dirty Business. If you're listening and you haven't seen it yet, it's a 3-part series which sort of flits between the late 90s and sort of present day, or the last couple of years, and follows the sewage scandal. It's quite a hard watch, I would say. I'd say it'd be quite a hard watch for a lot of people in the industry. We know from conversations we had leading up to it, there was a lot of nervousness in the water sector about, the impact this was going to have on the sector. What did you make of it?
It was a tough watch. You're right, for many reasons. Obviously there is some very literally real human drama at the heart of this. The family featured in the first episode, where the daughter sadly contracted E. coli and died. It's a horrible, tragic story, and it's impossible not to be moved by that. It's a tough watch, as you said, for the water sector, because it doesn't come out well from this, and I'll talk about that again in a minute. It's a tough watch for the regulators, particularly the Environment Agency. There isn't really much in here about Ofwat. This is mainly about the Environment Agency. That they get a real hammering. It's a tough watch for anybody who was in government during that time. I will say, being completely honest, and this isn't a TV critics podcast, but also I just found it quite a tough watch, because it's a bit of a weird one. I mean, what a docudrama is seems to be quite ill-defined, really, doesn't it? But this one, there's a lot of really technical stuff, and the two main characters, a lot of their dialogue is really just exposition of, so what you're saying is that the sewer overflow discharge at blah 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 blah, which I don't know how engaging that is for people who don't know much about the industry, which is obviously lots of people are going to be watching this. There are constant kind of glossary terms that are displayed at the bottom of the screen to explain what's going on. I mean, I watched it with my wife, and I think she drifted off somewhere in the second episode, because there's quite a lot to take in there. A lot of it feeds into a narrative, of course, about the water sector. The fear from the water companies is that this is going to be a Mr. Bates versus the post office kind of moment for the sector. I don't think that's going to happen for two reasons. One, this is on Channel 4, and it's not going to get as big an audience as ITV. That programme, Mr. Bates versus the post office, for various reasons, was just a big sleeper hit. I think it was a New Year thing that just caught people's attention. I don't think this one is going to have the same kind of cut through, not least because of all the technical jargon in there. I also, and this is a difficult thing for water companies to hear, but the honest truth is their reputation is so low, and they are so front and center, front page news all the time for all the wrong reasons, that quite frankly, their reputation couldn't sink much lower. I think there's going to be a lot of people watching this and tutting and it's just what I thought, just what I expect. I don't think it's really going to move the dial much. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think that comparison to the Mr. Bates versus the Post Office, clearly the producers of this docudrama, as we're calling it, that's what they want. That's what they're.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Of course.
There's very unsubtle links to it. I think they even mentioned the Post Office at one moment in it as well. So that's clearly what they were aiming for. I don't really understand the timing of putting this out now. Maybe a couple of years ago it would have had a bigger punch and been a bit more of a expose of something that was happening. I don't feel like this is a hidden topic that's sort of going on. So I question the timing of it a little bit. I thought the thing it did do well was kind of protects the workers. Like the engineer, they got the Thames engineer who's going in literally wading through feces and dealing with everything that's going wrong at the wastewater plants himself. I thought because that kind of was a bit of my fear beforehand, because we've been hearing a lot of water company bosses express fear about sort of abuse of their staff, the boots on the ground staff. So I was a bit worried that before this came out, that might sort of add to that fire, but I think they did well not to do that.
And same with the Environment Agency kind of people on the ground as well. There's a whistleblower in particular that is mentioned. I don't know how much that's based on fact, but certainly the employees of the Environment Agency, I think, come out of this well. The bosses less so, and I've got views on that, which I'll come into in a minute.
Yeah, that was what I was going to come on to next, was the environment. I didn't find that as believable though, for some reason.
No, maybe
it just
not.
didn't. It just kind of felt shoehorned in there a little bit with those scenes about, like the staff challenging the bosses. Those things.
That bit just seemed so unrealistic, didn't it?
Yeah.
And again, it was all this exposition. There was all the way through this program, there are people looking confused and going, "Hold on a minute, are you saying?" And then just relaying the plot for the audience again, which
yeah. Maybe
and I found
hammer home a point, wasn't it? I guess it was.
It was, yeah. It was, and it was an unsubtle point, and it was very much goodies and baddies, and that I think is the thing that I disliked most about it, because it's more nuanced than that. As we know, it is a lot more nuanced than that. But the program was keen to present the families, obviously, the two people investigating the water companies, the main characters, those sort of frontline workers, if you want to call them that, as the heroes. But then it was completely black and white. Everyone else was a villain. Everyone high up in a water company was either utterly incompetent or doing this deliberately. There was no shade there, and I thought some of there's a lot of people that mention in this program that, of course, we know, and I think in many cases they were unfair depictions of them. I thought Toby Willison, who was at Southern Water previously, the Environment Agency, I thought he was treated quite unfairly. I thought James Bevan was a pantomime villain. This is the CEO at the time of the Environment Agency, was presented as a pantomime villain. I think the truth is much more nuanced than that. I think he oversaw a period where there were massive cuts to the Environment Agency's budget, and some of that is reflected, and they do reflect on the government's actions there. But I think he is presented, as a very one-dimensional character. I thought the depiction of Susan Davy, the chief executive of South West Water, I thought was borderline misogynistic, really. I thought she was presented as an airhead, really, which is totally unfair. This is
couldn't be less like her, is what I thought when I saw it.
Absolutely not. And I thought that was those kind of invented scenes there where she was rehearsing how she would cover up pollution incidents, essentially. Was just ridiculous, that bit.
Although it's so over the top that maybe everyone would just see through it and say, well, that's just ridiculous. Of course she's not like that at all. And you only have to watch her at any of those committee meetings that she did. She's very straight talking, very to the point. She's not this airhead that they create her out, make her out to be. I thought it was poor and unnecessary to the whole point of it was almost like they had to fill a bit of the last episode, so they kind of said, oh, let's pick on her for some reason.
I know. I thought that was entirely unfair. I didn't dislike everything about it, and I do think that, I mean, your point as to why do it now? I suppose, well, first of all, it probably takes a long time for them to set up something like this. So I guess when this guy started writing it probably was just emerging at that time. It takes, I suppose, a long time to produce these things. But also, I mean, obviously we're now at a stage where I think it's quite good for regulatory reform to be front and center for people, and that is one of the surprising things that came out of this was the regulation feature and the nitty gritty of regulation featured so heavily. And I think that is useful going into this next process where we're talking about merging the existing water regulators into one, and what the priorities of that regulator is going to be, as we've talked about before, how much it's going to cost to do that. So I think it's not a bad thing to have that grounded in the public's mind, and the series ends with a call for reform, with a call to do things differently, and with a call for everybody to take some responsibility for this. And I think that is a good message. So I think if something, the positive comes out of this on that front, then I think it will have been a worthwhile endeavour. But as a standalone analysis of the water sector, I think it's flawed.
Career in TV journalism awaits you, James. Turning to another Radio 4 style segue, talking about reform of regulation. The other story this week, I guess, that caught my eye, just as we've got an extra sort of 5-10 minutes we can talk about here, was Ofgem putting forward what it believes should be its new KPIs. One of which, quite ironically, was to lessen the regulatory burden on the sector, in which it almost immediately concedes that it was running a consultation that DESNZ is almost exactly running its own one on, which I couldn't help but chortle at that. But the other interesting bit that sort of leapt out at me was its desire for more or for new entrants to the energy retail market to come forward with innovative business plans or innovative business models, it said. And I think that raised a few eyebrows among current chief execs at
Indeed,
and I'm thinking of Bill Bullen at Utilita in particular, who didn't waste any time in commenting. I think it was about 30 seconds after our newsletter went out. He was straight on there. I can't really remember exactly what he said now, but it was something, why do they want new entrants? Is it because they've squeezed the life out of the current ones or something? Something along those lines.
That was certainly the message that he was trying to get across. I mean, it's interesting this document, because obviously it references in there that the government is doing its own review of Ofgem, and it does feel very much like this is a document that they've been meaning to publish for a while and have been waiting for the government to decide what its priorities are, but they've just sort of run out of road, so they've had to put it out. Some laudable things in there, but Ofgem just needs a proper strategic steer from governments. I mean, I think there's less in some ways to clarify than there is on the water side, where it really is kind of going back to basics and building a regulator from the ground up. I think a lot of the fundamentals from Ofgem are sound, and particularly on the network side of things. I think it is. There's certainly some strategic steers they need on anticipatory investment, and what the role of flexibility is going to be, all that kind of stuff. But I think it's pretty set. It's on the retail side that the big reform is needed, and Ofgem can only do so much without the government setting out what its vision of the future of the retail sector is, and it really, really does need to do that quickly, because retailers, as we've said before, they are the gatekeepers to the energy transition for customers, and we need a framework around them where they can have sustainable business models that they can differentiate, and they can offer packages that help customers along that journey. At the moment, that just isn't the case. They don't have the flexibility to do that.
Yeah. Why on earth is it taking so long to get this Ofgem review out? It was supposed to be. It's nearly a year late now, isn't it?
I think it is. Yeah, and we've had
spring 2025. I think was the initial.
It wasn't
a date in my mind, but
because we were hearing very strongly that it was imminent at that point. And I don't know what happened. I think it's one that the government has always struggled with. I mean, Engie retail, which I imagine is what is holding this up, is the approach to that. There have been several aborted attempts to have a proper future of energy retail kind of strategy, and I don't know if that is tied up with.
I wonder if they're waiting for the PPM investigations to be concluded or anything.
Possibly,
like that.
Also that's another long running saga. Yeah.
But one for another podcast, perhaps, before we go down another rabbit hole. So we'll leave it there. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in a fortnight.